Okay, the next transformation we're going to look at is reflections. And so it's just like you would think if you think of a mirror. So it's the mirror image of your pre-image. So reflections, they flip. That's why I boxed that FL. So you can think of reflections and they're going to flip. So the coordinates, remember, they're always in alphabetical order. First letter that shows up in the alphabet stands for the X. Second that shows up is the Y, just like your regular coordinates, X and Y. X comes first in the alphabet and then Y. So for example, if they give you the letters A, B, then A is your X value, B is your Y value. G, F, so F comes before G in the alphabet, so F is your X, G is your Y. K, L, X, Y, D, and C. D comes after C in the alphabet. Ooh. So it'd be Y and then X. So reflection is a shape that's flipped. So reflection type of transformation where a figure is flipped over a line of reflection. For you guys, that's either going to be the x-axis or the y-axis. To reflect a figure of the x-axis, multiply the y coordinates by -1. So when you flip over the x-axis, the y is what changes. To reflect over the y-axis, multiply the x coordinate by -1. So rule for reflection over the y-axis is it turns your x value negative, or really the sign in front changes. So if it was positive, now the x-axis or the x value is negative. If it was negative, now it's positive, and the opposite for x-axis. Wow, I really misspelled that in an axis. Hello. So x and y, the y is what changes, and the only thing that changes is the sign in front. Okay, so the value of that number. If it was negative, it turns positive. If it was positive, it turns negative. Okay, so that's the rule. If you can remember that, really you'll be doing okay. But some people visually need to see the graph. And remember your x-axis, side to side. Horizontal, right or left. Y-axis is your vertical, up and down. And you want to check all of your answer choices. So number 1, that coordinate grid shows triangle ABC. Triangle ABC is reflected across the x-axis. Okay, so that means your line of reflection is here. Okay, that's like your mirror. Think about it as being your mirror. To create triangle A prime, B prime, C prime, which rule describes the transformation? Okay, so we want to check all of these, but we want our shape to be down here, and it should look like a mirror. We want it to be in this coordinate quadrant, and it should be a mirror image of the triangle that they gave you. Okay, so just to check all these answer choices, if you get stuck, this is one way to do it. You can just check the answer choices they give you. So let's start with A, and the old coordinate was at 1, 1. And so we'll check all of these answer choices to see which would make sense. Okay, so we want our A value to be in this quadrant, and it should look like a mirror image of that one. Okay, so A, if we use the first rule, so x negative y. So that means our x stays the same and y becomes negative. Okay, so that means that would put it at 1, -1. That's about right, right? Because here's our line of reflection. It's a mirror. That's pretty good. It should be the same distance from your line of reflection, and that one works. Just to make sure, we'll check the other ones. So if we looked at B, if this rule was it, that means -1, 1 would be the point. So let's see, -1, 1. Okay, so that's saying that that's B. Is that going to be a reflection? It would be a reflection over the y-axis, but it said it reflected across the x-axis. So this one, B, is not going to work. Then C, if we did 1, oh, so they flipped them, so it would be 1 and 1, 1, 1, which would be in the exact same spot. Okay, if it's reflected, it's a mirror image of it. It's not the same, so that one's not going to work. And what about D? Y. So they flip Y. Ooh, that one's hard. So since these are the same, let's go ahead and use one of the other points. So let's use B now. So B's at 5, 1. So if I were to flip those, that means this point would be at 1, negative 5. So 1, negative 5. Okay, but is this making a mirror? If this was a mirror, A is matching, but C would be the one that needs to be down here, and B would have to be right here. Okay, so the answer should be A. Okay, the other way to check that really is if you've got your line of reflection, so in this case it's the x-axis, and you know that, sorry, I'm trying to erase that. And you know that this is like your mirror. So your image should match and be down here. So just look and see how far away each point is from that line of reflection. So like A is 1 point away from your mirror. So that means on the opposite side, on the other side of that mirror, A prime has to be 1 point away. Okay, B 1 point away on the opposite side. And C, how far? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that would be your mirror image. So those points shouldn't match. Okay, and these step 2, step 3, that kind of walks you through what we just did. We did a little bit shorter and quicker, but that's what it walks you through, okay? So let's look at the next example. The coordinates of the vertices of a quadrilateral are E, -2, -1, -2, -5, and -6, -5, -8, -1. Okay, so let's go ahead and plot these points. Take a second and plot those on this blank graph. Okay, so quadrilateral EFGH is reflected across the y-axis to create the prime, or the new image. And I want to know which rule describes the transformation. So if it's reflected across the y-axis, so which rule describes this transformation? So if it's reflecting over the y-axis, then that means our image is going to be in our 4th quadrant. Okay, so when we look at all these points and after we check A, B, C, and D, we want to make sure that our new image is over here. So let's go ahead and check all those points. So rewrite the coordinates for every answer choice. And I'm just going to start with the first one, so E, -2, -1. So we'll start E, -2, -1. That's our original. So if we check our answer choices, if we start with A, so A says that they flip, so that means -1 is first, then -2, and our sign in front of the x value changes. So instead of a negative, it's a positive now. Okay, so let's look and see -1, +2, where would that land? -1, +2. Okay, so that's reflecting over the x-axis. But our problem said over the y-axis, so that one's not going to work. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of A. So then on B, same thing, it says they flip, so -1, -2, and the sign in front of the y value changes. So I'm going to erase that. So 1, -2. So let's come back up here. 1, -2. Okay, so, oh, that would be E prime. So they're saying that's E prime. So is that a mirror image of your original E? No, because it should be the same distance and in the same location as your original. So it should be 1/. So B is not going to work. Now let's try C, -2, -1. And it says -2, -1 says your y value changes. So the negative in front of that y is going to now disappear. So -2, +1. -2, +1. Okay, so again, it's crossing the wrong line. Okay, our mirror is this y-axis, so it's got to be over here. So let's erase that stuff. So we know it's going to be D, but let's check just to make sure. So -2, -1, but it says the sign in front of the x value changes. So 2, -1, +2, -1. Okay, so does that work? Is that a mirror image 2 away from it. D is your answer. Triangle QRS is shown below. Triangle QRS is transformed to create triangle Q prime, R prime, S prime, and the coordinates of triangle Q prime, R prime, S prime are negative X, positive Y for each. Which transformation has occurred? So reflection across the X-axis, possibly. So if we reflected across this, it would have to be somewhere down here. So say we look at S is at 9, 2. If it was a reflection across the Y-axis, oh sorry, highlighted the wrong one. If it was a reflection across the Y-axis, it would have to be over here. So if we reflected across the Y-axis and we changed it according to their rule, that would be negative 9, 2. So negative 9, 1, 2. Okay, so does that work? Is it the same distance across? Seems to work. What if we did Q just to see? 3, 2, 3, 2. If we did it that way, negative 3, positive 2. That would work. Right now it's looking like that would be a good reflection. So I'm going to put a check here. Rotation of 90 degrees about the origin. If it's a rotation of 90 degrees, remember your X and Y. Well, you don't remember because you haven't done it yet, but these two are going to flip. Okay, so it's not going to be a rotation. If it was, that would mean it would be in that quadrant. Reflection across the X-axis. So would it be reflected across here? No, because we know, looking back at our rules, if it changes the X-axis, then the sign in front of the Y value changes, or translation. Okay, so a translation, remember you add or subtract to your X values. You don't change the signs in front. So it's going to be a reflection across the Y-axis because our X values changed. And we can go through all those steps and you can figure it out that way. But if you can remember those rules, then it's a little bit easier. Okay, last one, triangle DEF is reflected across the X-axis to create triangle D prime, E prime, F prime. If point E of DEF is F negative G, which algebraic representation best describes point E prime of DEF? So remember we talked about in the alphabet, whichever one comes first is going to be your X value. So F in the alphabet comes before G. So that's going to be X and negative G be negative Y. Okay, and all my answer choices are A and B. So in the alphabet, which one comes first? A. So that means this is saying Y negative X. This is saying Y positive X. This is saying X negative Y. And this, since it's saying minus 270, that's a translation. Okay, so the only one that matches is going to be